The goal here is just to be able to chat with you, Jen, and to talk a little bit about what it's kind of been like through your journey. That way people who are dealing with the same challenges can either relate to you or like we've talked about in the past, just recognize that they're not alone in this journey through this disease. So, first and foremost, I just wanted to kind of help tell your story. And so maybe you can start out by telling me how you found out that you had RA and, like how old you were and those sorts of things about when you were first diagnosed and what that was like.
Okay. I was 14 and I felt like I jammed my finger. So like my finger joint swelled up and it was probably for, a week or two, and then I realized, it's probably not a jammed finger, like maybe something's wrong, maybe it's broken, I don't know. So I told my mom, and then my mom took me to the doctor, and our primary care doctor, my pediatrician, said that she thought it was juvenile rheumatoid arthritis and that she was going to send me to a rheumatologist, and that even though I hadn't presented symptoms for I think you have to have symptoms for 6 months or a certain amount of time before they'll actually send you to a rheumatologist. She said that that's what she pretty much thought it was. So they sent me right away to the rheumatologist and did blood work and urine tests and everything like that and confirmed that it was JRA.
So you were 14 when that happened?
Yes.
So when you went to the doctor to get the blood tests and everything, did they tell you about your diagnosis? Did you have to come back? Tell me a little bit about that process. If somebody is experiencing symptoms now and they're curious about what it's like to go to the doctor and maybe what to expect. I'm sure things change over time, but what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think it's probably a lot different now than it was back then. But essentially my pediatrician just said you have juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and I had no idea what that was or what it even meant, and so it didn't really even click or mean anything to me at that point in time. I just went home and somebody said what's wrong, and I said I have arthritis and went about my day.
Right.
So it didn't really have any effect on me yet, and if the physical symptoms weren't bad enough yet for me to realize what an impact it was going to have, but it didn't take long for the physical symptoms to come. So probably within a month, maybe 2 months, is when all the physical symptoms started getting really bad. So I couldn't open the truck door to get into the car, and I couldn't open a milk jug, and going upstairs was really hard because my knees had gotten so swollen. So just little things that started happening in my daily life, then I started realizing that everything is different.
Right, and so for you as a 14-year-old, you talked about some of the physical changes that started to happen. How did that kind of affect life as an adolescent? I mean, were you active as a young person, or maybe you played an instrument, or how did that affect your life in terms of your joints starting to swell and some of the things that you did as a 14-year-old?
Well, I was a soccer player, so when all those things started to happen, it made it impossible for me to run. So I couldn't play soccer even though I would try. And then I would go to the rheumatologist, and he had basically said that I was done playing soccer, so that I couldn't play anymore, that I wasn't to play anymore, and that if I chose to play anymore, that by the time I was 30, I would be in a wheelchair.
Wow. So how did you take that news?
It was probably the hardest thing ever, because soccer was my life, and you go from playing every single day to then not being able to play, not knowing why you can't play, then realizing somebody tells you why you can't play, and then somebody tells you that you cannot play.
Right.
So it was hard, and I didn't really know how to cope with it or deal with it. I just kind of continued to go on with life and try to figure out a way to play again, even though I couldn't.
So when you were young and when you first got diagnosed, was there a conversation around remission or how to manage the disease? Maybe we can talk a little bit about that, drug management, diet, exercise, anything that had to do with how you should be approaching this disease, considering you were getting diagnosed at such a young age. So what was kind of on the docket in terms of your approach, as it were, with your rheumatologist and your family, and how you were going to kind of like attack this disease?
Well, immediately my rheumatologist put me on some heavy drugs: methotrexate, Plaquenil, naproxen, steroid shots. We also did injections of cortisone, and it took a while for the drugs to work. And so it was a struggle, calling the doctor, going back to the doctor, this isn't working, upping medication, lowering certain ones, increasing others, until we finally found the right balance of something that made it possible for me to actually just get through my day and not be, stuck in bed.
Right.
And there was no, it was always talk about medication from the doctor's perspective, and then Mom decided that she wanted to try to figure out another way to help relieve the pain and the symptoms. So she took me to a naturopath doctor who food allergy tested me, and we found out that I was allergic to everything, like literally everything. I mean, all the way from A to Z, like I can't even think of them all, but amaranth, wheat, dairy, all the cheeses, every single kind of milk, yeast, bakers, brewers, peanuts. I mean, the list just was long. I think there was a list of like maybe 100 things, and they gave you a range of how allergic you were to these things. And the biggest things for me were wheat and dairy and yeast. And so at that point in time, I would wake up in the morning at like 6 and leave the house by 6:40, and I didn't get home until 6. So my mom really struggled with trying to implement a plan that would help me through nutrition, because she had no control over what I could consume when I wasn't away from home.
Were you open to that at a young age? I mean, was that something that you understood, that you could help your disease with diet?
Not really, because once we realized what I was allergic to, and I think Mom probably realized that there's absolutely no way that she can control what I consume outside of breakfast and dinner. Snacks and lunches were gone, so there wasn't too much of an effort, I don't think, to try to change things. I know Mom tried to go to grocery stores and find things at that point in time that she can control at home.
Yeah.
But she said that at that point in time that there was no Whole Foods.
Right.
There was no natural markets. There's no gluten-free. There was no alternative to dairy-free. So really it was almost impossible from what she was trying to... Yeah. What she researched was that there's no way she could implement it.
Yeah.
So we didn't. We just did the medications.
And so were you able to experience any, kind of going through your young adulthood, did you ever have the experience of being in remission, or feeling like you were making progress with the disease as it related to kind of halting its progress as you started to grow with the disease? Yeah,
so after a year of being on the medication, I was physically able to run again. So I started playing soccer again against the doctor's will or suggestion. He again told me not to do it, but it was just such a big part of my life that I did, and I felt good because the medication was working. So I felt well enough to play, but the physical symptoms had already taken a little bit of toll on my body. Like my ankle and my knees were always swollen. My fingers were swollen, and so I didn't have the ability to, I didn't have the flexibility in my ankles, and little things that you don't realize when you're young. But it did. So remission was talked about, and at one point in time, they had actually told me that I was in remission from the drugs or from the medication that I was taking. But they never took me off of them, and I always had to take them. And eventually I just got tired of taking the medication, and I think that I had this false sense of healing because they say that you're in remission. And so I just stopped taking the medication for a little while, a couple years, and everything just came right back. And so you realize that you're not really technically in remission, you're just in a sort of medication-induced remission.
Nice. That's interesting. Okay, so So when it comes to the approaches to managing RA, that kind of plays into it, and you're saying that medication is obviously a huge part of anybody who is diagnosed with this disease is going to have to work through those elements and the drugs and the medication. Considering that you've been living with this disease for over 2 decades, what do you feel has worked best for you in terms of managing the day-to-day pain, and what's made the biggest difference in your life? And maybe that's changed over time. Maybe,
yeah.
Different phases, you've had different experiences. But
I think that obviously when I was younger, the medication worked, and it worked well enough to get me active again. And then when I was not on medication, I just kind of pushed through it mentally. Some days it would be harder than others. You'd get up and, you'd have a flare up and you couldn't get out of bed, so you wouldn't be able to, go to work or go to school or whatever you had to do that day. But then, when I got a little bit older, we tried another naturopathic approach when I think I was like in my 20s, and that really helped. So for me, I think that when I was younger, it was a lot of medication, and then as I got older, it was realizing that that through your diet you can control as much as one can control it. You control the amount of pain that you're going to be in through what you eat. And the way it was explained to us was that that your gut is just something's going on in your gut, and the foods that you eat create havoc in there, and then that's how the disease starts to get worse, permeating the stomach wall. It's all very technical and doctory, but once you realize that, you also learn that if you remove the trigger foods, then you remove a lot of the pain and swelling as well. So for me, a lot of the big trigger foods are the wheat, the dairy, the yeast, and that's almost in everything. So essentially eating if you're going to eat a breakfast, find like a gluten-free cereal with, dairy-free milk, and then your lunch is a great, huge, big salad, and then for dinner, again, just sticking away from those foods that trigger you, and that really helps your body not have those reactions, and so the pain and the swelling go down. And then post-kids, obviously, was a little bit different because it came on strong again.
Well, maybe talk a little bit about that. So you're a mother of 2. Mm-hmm. How old are your kids?
2 and 4.
Okay, so maybe you can talk about that. What was it like to make a decision to have kids? Was that a challenge for you in terms of what it was going to do to your body physically, and anything in terms of long-term visions about being a mother? Was there a lot of conversation about whether you should have kids because you had RA? Was that a struggle for you at all, or was that didn't have any effect on you?
No, not really. I mean, I always knew I wanted to be a mom, and so it was never a question of should I. Yeah. I always knew I wanted to be a mom, and Barry and I always knew we wanted to have kids. So it was more a question of when do we think we're ready. So we, also had that. We had researched it and learned that most women with RA go into remission when they're pregnant. And so our focus was, prior to having kids, was to make sure that I was off all of my medication at least 2 years before we even tried to have kids, just because of the negative effects that all the medications can have. And, they tell you, you only have to be off for like 4 months, but we just really wanted to play it super safe. So we stuck to the nutritional approach 2 years prior, and it really worked for us. I was able to go about my day and go to work and lead a semi-active life. I wasn't running marathons or playing soccer, but I could get a little exercise in on an elliptical and lift a little bit of weights. And so but for me, I didn't go into remission when I was pregnant, so it was a huge letdown. Oh. So with my first, I was able to manage the pain without any medication through the first pregnancy. And then I was in pain, and I was in more pain than I had been prior to getting pregnant. So I knew that something was kind of weird with me, and I didn't go into remission. So I still experienced the pain, and then after the baby was born, it just like magnifies by thousands. Like the pain just skyrockets. And so you're breastfeeding and you can't really take medication because you're breastfeeding. So, and I wanted to breastfeed. That was just the choice that we had. We knew that was the healthiest thing for our kids, for our family. So we chose that. And so I then chose not to obviously take any medication. So the pain was really bad, and you struggle because you're not getting any sleep and you're irritable and tired and in pain, and it just makes it hard. But it wasn't anything that we couldn't get through. We just pushed through and got through it. And then you're kind of just a mom and just kind of getting through the day, and then having another one and deciding, to do it. And then the second was really, really hard because the pain never went away from after the first. Mm-hmm. So, you're in a lot of pain as opposed to minor pain. And it was that way through the whole pregnancy. And then after my second was born, again, the huge skyrocket of pain again was there. And breastfeeding him as well. And then, so it was hard. The second one was really, really hard. The pain that came after the second was probably the worst in my life that I had ever dealt with. So then we had obviously a choice to make after the second was born. Do we want to have more, or what should we do? And our decision was that we wanted to, while we may have wanted more kids, I could probably be a really good mom to two, and let's get me healthy again so I can be a really good mom to two.
So that was the choice. So question about the pain as it related to like the pregnancy stuff. I'm just kind of curious. So when you're pregnant, you have cravings, and maybe the diet isn't as tight. I don't know. Maybe talk about how you handled your diet through that time. Was that still a really important piece to the puzzle? Do you feel like some of the pain after the pregnancy had anything to do with a change in diet, or was there something that was happening, or it just happened to be triggered by, having a baby and then, not being able to be on any drugs, and it just seemed like that pain continued to get worse and worse through the pregnancy and then even worse after. Was that just the trend that you felt, or was there maybe outside or environmental things that were happening that might have triggered that?
I think it was probably a combination of both. I tried my hardest to stick to to stay away from the foods that I knew were my triggers. Yeah. But like, you say when you're pregnant, you do get you get cravings. And so I tried to not give in to my cravings as often as possible. I allowed myself once a week, if I was like really, really craving something, if I had gone like a week with it, then I would say, all right, it's been a week. I'm just going to eat it and get it over with. I definitely wasn't super strict on the nutritional plan during the pregnancy, but I tried my best. Yeah. And I think that the foods did affect my pain levels post pregnancy, because you're trying to consume extra calories so that you have enough milk for your child. And I wasn't as strict on the nutritional side, but the pain was so bad, so bad, that I knew that it wasn't just the food. Yeah. I knew that it was something else, like something had happened in my body, and I don't know what it was, but it was pretty severe.
So then how did you come down from that? What was the transition for you? Was it getting back on medication that helped you to really reduce your pain? How did you, maybe talking about life after kids and what it's like to come down from that, or if somebody is in a situation where they're experiencing really high spikes in pain levels, probably something a lot of people deal with for different reasons, whatever their trigger may be, if it's pregnancy or something else. But what was your next step, like when you go through something like that and you realize, like, I can't live like this, there's just no way? Where do you turn to next? Did you go to your rheumatologist? Did you try and talk through it with your husband, or what was your next step there?
Yeah, well, I had to have my knee drained twice in a year because the swelling was so bad that I could barely walk. And so it just got to this point of my energy was so incredibly low. I was not able to clean my house and just kind of barely making it through the day. And we just kind of sat down and said, we need to figure it out. What's an immediate fix that we know will help with my energy levels so that I can get myself healthy again. And so we knew that we needed to see the rheumatologist. We knew that the nutrition plan would work, but we also knew that we needed something super strong because my pain was so bad and my swelling was so bad that we needed immediate help. And so we went back to the rheumatologist and started on a new medication plan, and it helped. It's still the trial and error of what medication works, which one doesn't, in combination with this other medication. And some of them make you crazy, whereas before, when I would take them when I was younger, I didn't feel like I was crazy. And so it's really hard to find the right balance, but it's good to just kind of keep going through the motions with your doctor and stay in contact and make sure that you're honest with yourself and your doctor about all your medications and your side effects. And so then we did that approach as we got me healthy again. So I was able to have a little bit more energy and my functionality was much higher. And then we started back on the nutrition side because we knew that the nutrition would work, but you have to have the energy to do the nutrition because you have to stick to it. And you have to have the food in the house, and if you don't have the food in the house, you're going to fall off your nutrition plan. And then when you're tired, you don't want to go shopping, and you just kind of find what's in the house. Or, if you're tired and you're out to dinner, you just kind of cave in and say, oh, I'll have pasta, So after we got me feeling much better physically and mentally and emotionally, then we started to plug in the nutrition side as well. And so that's where we're at now, is kind of a nutrition and medication.
So
approach.
Quick question about that, because you've had 20 years of experience with this, and I don't even know the answer to this question, but how many rheumatologists have you had, and what are maybe some of the qualities that you look for in a rheumatologist?
I've only had 2 rheumatologists. I have seen a lot of them. I've seen probably 5 or 6. And it's hard to find one that you really, really like. And even when I was younger, I did not like my rheumatologist at all. But looking back, he was very good, and I'm glad that my mom chose him for me. Mm-hmm. He was very aggressive in treating it, and I think that's important because you have to prevent the disease from advancing. And if you're not aggressive enough, then it's just going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. So I've had 2 who I trust, and many more that I've seen that I did not trust.
So what helps you to trust them? It's their aggressive approach with the disease. Is there anything else that you would say helps somebody that's out there struggling to find someone that they can really trust?
I think you just know. That's one of those things, like when somebody says you know that you're in love, you just know. It's the same thing with your rheumatologist. Like, you get down into the room with them and you just know whether or not you trust them. Now, it's different for a kid because a kid is looking to have their needs met and their wants met, and if a doctor doesn't necessarily give them what they want, like for me it was, you took soccer away from me and being athletic, so I don't like you. And 20 years later, looking back, like that was actually a really smart move on his part. But you just know. You sit down and within 5 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so and kind of wrapping things up, just getting towards the end here. There's obviously the physical battle that goes on with RA, but there's also the mental battle of knowing that you're kind of stuck with this disease, essentially. So is there anything, from a mental standpoint that has helped you to get through to the day-to-day stuff? Because, obviously you have long-term thinking with this disease, and like you said, the planning with your rheumatologist, and how do we, keep it from progressing, and, there's that big picture thinking, but so much of the challenge that people are dealing with is the day-to-day stuff, just making it through the days. So, what has helped you mentally, or to stay strong mentally? Maybe there's things that have helped you through your journey that you could share with everyone.
Well, I think that first and foremost, realizing that you can't beat this disease by being strong mentally is probably the first thing you have to realize. Like, just because you're really strong mentally doesn't mean that you can beat this disease. So I could, go out and tell myself I'm gonna run 4 miles, and I'm mentally strong enough to do it, but it's not an intelligent thing to do because physically my body will just break down. And so you have to realize that mentally you need to use your mental strength in a positive way as opposed to a negative way. Instead of trying to beat the disease mentally and overcome it mentally, you have to think of a way or realize by doing research what's the best route for you to lead a healthy life. And so for me, that is essentially like getting the disease under control. And you feel so much better when you feel like you're in control of it. So whether it's through medication or nutrition, and for me, like this last bout after the kids was, let's get the medication into my system and stop it, because it's clearly progressing. Let's just stop it in its tracks, and then we can get it under control with food. And so that helps mentally, just knowing that you're doing something to stop it and that you're not just getting worse.
Right.
And then also knowing your food triggers, like knowing the foods that irritate you and avoiding them, it gives you this power over what's going on within your body. And it's different than the whole like medicine approach and taking the drugs, because when you're taking the drugs, if you stop the drugs, you're not in control. Like the disease is still in control of your body. It owns you, and it's going to dictate your day. You might want to wake up and do, the floors and do this and do the laundry and mow the grass and clean the bathrooms. But you wake up and you're not in control of your body. Your disease is, and your disease tells you, oh, sorry, today you're just going to be in bed.
Right.
But the cool thing about the nutritional approach is that you start to realize that if you don't eat something, that you're in more control of your body than the disease is, because the triggers aren't triggering the arthritis, pain, and swelling. So, so mentally that gives you this like feeling of goodness and this sort of power over what you have, whereas you don't have that when you're just taking medication, because you're not in control. Right. The disease still is, you're just sort of hiding all the pain under some medication. Right. Whereas with the nutrition, you're stopping the reaction from occurring, so you feel very powerful, and it just boosts your, you just feel better. You just feel good. Yeah. Like you actually have a little bit more control back.
So when you are feeling really good and you feel like you have control over your RA, are you into exercise? Maybe you can talk a little bit about like the physical side. It is a challenge, obviously, physically, to kind of pull yourself out of bed to do certain things, and especially when you're tired or fatigued. There's all these reasons to say why not. But one of the things that every rheumatologist will say is that it's really important that you continue to exercise. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But have you been able to strike a balance, or what have you maybe you can talk about the things that you've tried that you liked and didn't like, maybe didn't like first, and then what is working for you if something's working for you now?
That's another big change that has occurred in the last 20 years. Like when I first was diagnosed, I was told not to exercise and not to run and, limit my movement, because that was just going to make everything worse. And so luckily, that has shifted. The approach has shifted, and now it's, yes, you do need to move and you need to do low impact exercises. And I think first of all, you have to have it under control. Like if you're just in a ton of pain every single day and you can barely get out of bed and barely get through the day, then you're not going to be able to even move. You're not going to go on walks, even if it's just a gentle stroll, around the block. You can't do it. Like you just don't have anything to give. Yeah. So first you have to get it under control, whether it's through going to a doctor and just stopping the progression, or if it's taking a really radical approach. That's not necessarily radical, but it's intense. If you're going to do the nutrition approach, do it to a T. You have to do it to a T to get it under control. So getting it under control is the first step to being able to move again. And then once you can move again, yeah, I think I've tried everything. Like, I know I shouldn't run, but I love to run because it's just my background. So I'll just try to run and see if it works this time.
Yeah.
Like, but no, it doesn't work. So okay, try bike riding. Bike riding for me worked for a long time. And then it just got really hard on my the movement for my ankles. I just don't have the flexibility in my ankles, and so it became more painful for me to ride than pleasurable. So I wanted to find something new. Somebody said try swimming. Swimming didn't work for me because I have arthritis in my elbow, and doing that motion of pushing your arm through the water is very painful on my elbow. So swimming didn't work for me. I tried, lifting weights, and you feel real good when you're doing it, but the next day you're wrecked. Like you're in a, you're real excited. I exercised today, and the next day you wake up and you can't move because you have a massive flare up from lifting weights. I tried aerobics, low impact, high impact. And it was just, again, that was one of those things. You feel really good when you're doing it because you're moving, and just the idea of moving makes you feel good. But then the next day, you pay 20-fold for it. And you pay 20-fold like for 3 days, like you have 1 day of great exercise and then 3 days of massive pain. So through trial and error, I've tried yoga. Yoga doesn't work for me because of my the limitations in my joints. I can't physically do the exercises that you have to do in yoga. So somebody introduced Pilates to me, and that was like heaven, because you can move and it doesn't hurt. And it not only doesn't hurt that day, it doesn't hurt the next day or the day after. So you can move again, and you feel this great sense of excitement because moving feels just so good.
Yeah.
So Pilates is fantastic because it's non-impactive, completely non-impactive, but you sweat and you feel good, like you're actually getting a workout. And so I love doing Pilates.
So is that your routine? Are you doing any other exercise other than Pilates, or is that primarily what you're doing from an exercise standpoint to keep your body healthy?
I do Pilates. And I've stopped trying to beat it mentally and try to like keep running or keep doing this or keep doing that. I know that Pilates is non-impactive and that it's actually healthy for my joints. Whereas a lot of the other exercises that I tried in the past, they may feel good at the time, but they're not really good for you, for my joints. They're not going to make my joints healthy. Whereas when you do Pilates, you actually feel like you're helping your joints get healthier. So I do Pilates, but now I can play with my kids. Like if the kids want to go for a walk around the block, I can go around the block with them twice, 3 times if they want to go. Whereas before, I could barely get to the end of the road. So if they want to ride their bikes, I can hop on a bike and I can ride a bike with them. But for me, that's the most important thing, is actually being able to move with my kids, get in the pool, swim with them, play a little bit of soccer in the backyard, gentle soccer. But just Pilates, it makes me feel very good, and I feel like I have control over the physical side of my body.
Yeah. No, that's great. I'm glad that you found relief through Pilates. I think that's awesome. I have an interesting question for you, my final question, but before I get to that, I just want to do a quick rundown of the symptoms that you've experienced, just so people listening can get a sense of what type of symptoms that you've had to go through. And we kind of touched on some of that, but talk to me a little bit about what that's been like for you in terms of symptoms through your progression.
It's fairly simple. It is pain, swelling, and fatigue. And fatigue, massive fatigue. Like, I think sometimes you think the pain is the worst, and then other times you think the fatigue is the worst, just because you literally feel like you can't do anything. You're just so exhausted. So diving a little bit deeper, it would be like, every joint is pretty much affected. I have joint pain and swelling in my fingers and my wrists and my elbows and my shoulders, my toes, my ankles, my knees, and my neck has also felt symptoms. So and for me now, having it for so long and not being very consistent with my approach and how to battle it, I think that I'm a little bit worse because now I have deformities and I have lack of range of motion in my ankles. So I have preventative things that prevent me from physically doing certain things now. So depending on where a person is, but the pain, the swelling, the fatigue.
Yeah. So if you could go back, let's say you could rewind 21 years and you're 14 all over again, what would you change about your approach with RA? How would you do things differently if you would do things differently?
I would definitely do the nutritional approach. I think that if we had now, or if we had then what we have now, then that would have been massive for me.
In terms of accessibility to foods and stuff?
Yeah, accessibility to alternative foods. That would have been huge. Just being able to have a different, a gluten-free bread, for example, for a sandwich bread, instead of, knowing that's my trigger, and just something simple like almond milk or rice milk it was just not accessible. Like dairy was the only option, and we were huge cereal eaters.
Right.
So I would say that if the nutrition aspect of it was available then, that would have been something that I think would have been more valuable to me then. So I would change that. I would definitely take a more nutritional approach in controlling the disease. I'd like to say that I would have stopped playing soccer.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I could have or would have. I liked it that much. I needed to be active, and that was my choice of activity. Now, had somebody introduced me to Pilates like right away when I was 14 and they said you can't play soccer, if somebody would have said, "Hey, here, try Pilates," then maybe I would have replaced it.
Yeah.
I just never found a good replacement for it until 20 years later.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to do that, to find the replacement for what they love if it's not healthy for their body.
Right.
I would also do preventative maintenance. You hear people say like, get healthy shoes and stop wearing high heels and don't do high impact exercises, and you're like, oh, I'm good. I don't have that problem yet. I'm not there.
Right.
But the thing with arthritis is that it's so slow and progressive, is that you don't realize that you're getting there because it is so slow. So you wake up and you're like, whoa, I can't even put my foot into a high heel. I can't physically wear high heels because my ankle doesn't bend. Right. So I would go back and make all those changes. I would wear healthy shoes and get inserts so that my arches aren't falling, and I would eat healthier and make those nutritional choices, knowing that they are going to impact you. If you don't make those choices now, you'll wish you had 20 years later.
So I've heard you talk a lot about nutrition. Obviously, that's a big part of what's helped you to manage your RA, along with working together with your rheumatologist on any drug plan that is necessary for you, and everybody is unique in that regard. But when it comes to the nutrition side of things, there's a lot of challenges that kind of go with new diet plans, and you've mentioned that before, how important it is for you to really be prepared for your nutrition plan, so you can not find yourself falling off the wagon, or you're not cutting corners. You're really kind of making sure you're crossing all your T's and dotting your I's. So in your experience out there, there's so many diet plans. There's so many different options that people can try. And again, RA being a unique disease, people have success on so many different levels in terms of the spectrum with nutrition. So I can understand that. But what nutrition plan do you enjoy, or do you have anything that you would recommend from a nutrition plan standpoint that you think could potentially benefit anybody that might be listening?
Yes, definitely. I think that's an interesting one. It's the nutrition approach is so it's so amazing because it can have such a big impact on on your disease and how you fight it, and on your quality of life. But at the same time, part of your disease is that you're in pain and you can't move very well and you're really, really tired. And so the nutritional approach takes a lot of mental thought, and it takes a lot of preparation, and that is a really tricky combination with having arthritis. And so I think that for me, I in trying different things in the past, I found it hard to stick with it because I was always having to come up with the dinner, or come up with the replacement food, or what can I eat, what can't I had to do all of that mental process of what is okay, what's not okay, is this okay to eat, is this a good replacement, is this ingredient even okay? I can't say it, but is that something I shouldn't have, and it's in this. So for me, I tried the Pattison program, and it is by far the greatest thing on earth, because it is all laid out for you. Everything is clear cut and planned. You don't have to do any of the thought process. All you have to do is read it and follow it. And it tells you what to do on this day, what to do on the next day, what to do on the third day, what to do on the fourth day. And it tells you everything from what day to eat what, and at what time to eat it. And then it breaks it down further into, it tells you what exactly to eat. I mean, it makes your grocery shopping list for you, because it's all there. Right. So you don't have to put in that mental effort to do it. All you have to do is put your mental effort into following the plan and sticking to the plan. And that makes it so much easier to stay on the plan when it's all prepared for you. It's all laid out, and so it makes it a lot easier to stick with it, and to not hit bumps in the road, or not fall off, or things like that.
Yeah. So the Pattison program. Okay. So it sounds like the direction that's provided, it's not just the food and the diet and the nutrition and telling people what to do, but it's how to do it. So that really seems like a big difference in the program that you're talking about. And I think that's awesome. That's great. I'm excited to learn more about that. All right, Jen. Well, I just want to say thank you for your time and sharing, and most importantly, I think getting your voice out there is really a critical part to this community, the RA community, and that's really what this website is all about, is connecting people that suffer with this disease and trying to provide natural solutions, because that's a big part of what is going to help, as you kind of mentioned today, with the Pattison program, and just how diet and nutrition has really helped you. So thank you so much for sharing your story, and I know it's going to help a lot of people. And until next time.
Well, thank you.
All right.